Hi, I'm Kelly,
Hi everyone, I'm Edward.
and we're part of the UE Communications Web team. We're presenting today about the newest SiteFarm update, and we're here to talk about what you need to know about the redesign and how you can get help if the new changes don't fit well with your site. So again, SiteFarm is redesigning and making a couple of big changes to the default template this summer, and that's pretty much what we're here to help with. We're letting you all know ahead of time about this so you can prepare your site for these changes and you won't be surprised when it just like appears out of nowhere. So if you've taken a look at the ucdavis.edu page within the last few months, you probably noticed that their website has updated. The newest SiteFarm update is pretty much a mirror design of that. So it was designed so that there's more consistency across screen sizes, and it's now a lot more mobile friendly. Okay, so when is this update happening? It's coming on July 10, which is about 3 weeks from now. So it's actually happening pretty soon. But it's enough time for us to help get your site prepared between now and the refresh. So you won't need to worry too much when the changes take place.
Yeah, so now we're going to go over some of the changes that are coming to the site. So first off, one of the major changes you might notice in the redesign is that the background color is changing. So previously, all of the sites, you'll notice that the entire background has this kind of like light bluish gray color, and then most of the components are in white boxes on top of that blue background. But now with the redesign, the background of all your sites is going to be white. So what this kind of means is that now a lot of components that were previously in white boxes are just kind of floating there. Instead, you don't really see that like border around each item. And you need to make sure that items within your site are updated to kind of reflect that and make sure that components are still organized within the layouts. So there are a few items that we've noticed have the biggest issues when it comes to this changing background color. First off is just images, especially within things like marketing highlights, like you can see on the slide. So white images just have poor contrast on a white background because it blends right in. And for certain images, they can appear to be floating and the page loses its visual structure. So if you look at the screenshots on the screen, you can see that on the left side, we have a marketing highlight. And that image is a good option because you can distinctly see that it's like a rectangular image and there's some text under it. But the image on the right is not so good because it's a white image. So all you see is this check it out that's floating there. And if you have a lot of components on your website that look like this, then it's a little bit hard to distinguish which text is associated with which image or where the marketing highlights are, which links go to where. So you really just want to make sure that all of that is consistent. Another item is the focal links. So the focal links haven't actually changed in terms of their design. They were white previously and they are white now, but now the background color is white, so it blends right in. This also means that some of the color mappings just have really poor contrast. So you'll notice, up top we have a marketing highlight with one of the new palette colors, Tahoe. And it looks great. You can see there's a blue circle, there's a white clipboard on it, and that's really, really easy for the user to see. But what's not so good is the focal link on the bottom, which uses one of the new palette colors, Golden State. There's a little calendar icon on there, but you can barely see it because it's just this like really bright light yellow. When it comes to these colors, there are alternatives. For example, if you wanted a yellow focal link, there are alternatives like the darker shade of yellow sunflower. And with that, there's also changes with the color palette. So in general, the colors should transition pretty nicely. Things like a blue will stay blue, but maybe a slightly different shade. But either way, you just need to make sure you continue to be conscientious of accessibility when it comes to these color combinations. We don't want light color text on a light background or really dark colored text on a really dark background. If you take a look at the SiteFarm website, you can find some of the old and new color mappings. So basically, what color, for example, sky blue is becoming Tahoe in the redesign. And you can also find the accessible color combinations. That is, which colors can you put text on what color background.
Yeah, so for the layout of the redesign, you would probably notice that the text is a lot larger than before everywhere. And because of that, it's recommended that you limit your block layout to just 2 to 3 columns. Adding any more columns would make the text a bit difficult to read at smaller size, which you can see from the images here. So like the top is what the text looks like when the layout is limited to 3 columns, but the bottom shows how squished together the text looks when you have additional blocks to the side.
So next up is the hero banners. So most sites probably have, this big hero banner on, the main homepage. So the big change about the hero banners is that the white text that's on the image no longer has a drop shadow, or, if you look at your current site, you might see that there's a little bit of a kind of like a gray outline around each of the letters. Since that's gone, the contrast isn't as good on certain images. So you really need to make sure that you use images that are darker or just have less white. If you take a look at the screenshots on the slide, Washington program is really easy to read because that background's a little darker. But UC Davis reaccreditation is a little bit hard to read because the background has a lot of white, and then some of the letters within the text just kind of like blend right in. You can't read it.
So for list, if you're using list within a block, you can see that the border list, like the image on the left, has a bit of indentation, and they're generally not suitable for narrow containers. As an alternative to this, it might be better to use the arrow list, similar to what you see on the right, to achieve if you're going for some sort of list.
So next is the block quotes. So the block quotes are, another item within the what you see is what you get editor. So block quotes are now distinctly quotes. You can see that previously they had this vertical bar next to the text, and now there's these giant quotation marks next to it. So you should make sure you aren't using block quotes for anything but a block quote. So you shouldn't use it for just trying to get things to lay out nicely or put things side to side.
Oh,
So with the block quotes, a lot of times people have been using them to try to accomplish this side-by-side layout. You can kind of see, in the images that there's text on the left, and then there's like another box with some text inside of it on the right. So once again, if you look at the left, it doesn't look so good anymore because there's these giant quotation marks. So what you can do instead for these layouts is to either use the new layout columns feature that we'll talk about later, or you can use something like a feature box, which also makes your text stand out, and you can put things next to each other.
Similar to block quotes, you should generally avoid using tables for anything but organized data. So they're not really effective for making text stand out anymore if you were previously using tables for this case. You can see from the oil layout on the left that the table helped make some sort of nice box that stands out, but the redesign has it changed so that there's only a line across either the top or bottom rather than all around. And instead of tables, there are other ways that you can make your text stand out, such as what Edward mentioned with the feature box. Another thing is using an alert box, and both help with making your information stand out if you wanted to put your information in some sort of box. Another good way is to just bold your text so that it pops out in contrast to the normal text. So layout columns. There's also the option to use the new layout column feature that's from the toolbox when you click edit on the body of your page or block. And you can see that there are different options you can choose from for the layout columns. which makes it easier to create side-by-side content. So yeah, you have the ability to adjust the width and sizing of the columns. So if, for example, you wanted the middle column to be larger than the side, you can do that with the 25, 50, 25 option, which if you play around with the layout column, you could see the options there. So this is also another useful alternative to the block quotes or feature boxes for side-by-side content.
So just a few other component design changes. So you'll notice that the headers the header of the page as well as the navigation bars look a little different now. So just on the slide, it's actually the one under due, the screenshot on the left, that is the most up-to-date version. But the point still stands that we really need to make sure that both the title of your page as well as all the items in the nav bar are concise when it comes to the wording. What if you have very long names for each of the buttons, then they'll begin to spill over, especially when it comes to like mobile views or smaller screen sizes. So with this redesign, they actually did make the nav bar almost full screen. So there's actually a little bit more real estate to work with when it comes to the navigation bar. So that means that if your navigation bar looks good now, it probably looks good in the redesign as well. But if it doesn't look good now, then you definitely need to take a look at that and make the choices that make it look as clean and easy to read as possible.
So some other features that had changes were the marketing highlight and horizontal marketing highlight. You can see that the style of these were changed so that the text of the marketing highlight is now directly underneath the images for both of them. So what you see on the left is what we're, or for the marketing highlight, what you see on the left is what we're used to, and the one on the right next to it is the new design change, and the same for the horizontal marketing highlight. The top image is the one we're familiar with, but the bottom one is the updated version with the text right underneath the images.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do now to prepare yourself for the site design changes. So first, you can, of course, view your development site, because what better way to figure out what changes need to be made to a redesign than looking at the redesign. So you can view your development site by just taking your original website URL and adding .dev.sf to the URL. So for example, for the UE-Comm website, it was previously uecom.ucdavis.edu, and now you just change it to uecom.dev.sf.ucdavis.edu, and that will give the website that has the redesign applied to it. So just really keep in mind that these dev websites are just a snapshot. That means they're not like a live in production site. So if you make any changes to your existing site with the old design, it won't affect the dev site. And if you make any changes to your dev site, it won't affect your existing site. So these are snapshots, it's all the content on there is just the content from when the dev site was created. So this also means that you're free to experiment with a dev site. If there are any new features, like let's say the layout columns that you want to play around with, you absolutely can on this dev site. Just make sure that you aren't spending too much time with it, because those changes that you make to the dev site won't be saved. Once the real sites are rolled out, it's just going to be the same content as your current site that's viewable to the public. And as you go through your sites, you take some time to kind of identify any major problem areas. Is there something looking funny? Is a blog quote being used for layout, for example? And you can decide whether it's something that can be resolved by making edits to your site. Like, for example, maybe if something was laid out with a block quote, you can just use a feature box instead. Or is it an issue with the SiteFarm platform? We have noticed, there are some translate so well over. And that is some feedback that can be passed over to the SiteFarm team. And there can be feedback forms found through either the email list or SiteFarm website or the SiteFarm Slack.
So another thing you can do is take a look at the overview for the redesign from the official SiteFarm website. The URL link is right there. So if you just type it in, you'll get to the page. And it's pretty much a more comprehensive article of the coming changes for the redesign. And it's continuously being updated to let everyone know of any more huge changes. This page also includes links to some demo recordings that the SiteFarm team made. So you could take a look at that if you're interested in knowing about some specific updates and how they would look or what the team recommends. You can also stay in the loop about any upcoming changes by joining either the SiteFarm channel on the UC Davis Slack page or joining their mailing list. They also have some co-working sessions. So if you have any questions about SiteFarm for your page, then you could go check that out. And of course, you can also contact us at ueweb@ucdavis.edu for support if you have any more questions for us.
All right, so finally, how can the UE web help with the site redesign? So for one, our team can meet with you to walk through your site and identify and prioritize any changes that need to be made. If you'd like to set up a meeting with us, just email ueweb@ucdavis.edu to schedule a time. Just let us know what times work for you. And we can also help you implement any changes that you identify either during that meeting or in your own time as you're going through the dev site. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always reach out and ask.
So yeah, that's pretty much all we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any questions, please let us know.